G'day champions. Today on the N70 build we're going to be putting these gauges in. Now sure, I'm putting these in a Hilux, but this could be applicable to putting gauges in any car. In my opinion, these are the three most important gauges to have in a turbo diesel vehicle. Your water, your boost and your EGTs. Now of course there already is a water temperature gauge on the dash, but after a couple 100,000 Ks, are you really going to trust that gauge for your engine not to boil? And the EGT, or exhaust gas temperature, is going to give you a more real-time indication of the temperature of the exhaust gases coming out of your engine, which will directly correlate to the temperature your engine's running at and how hard it's working. And the boost gauge, it looks cool going up and down, so you want one of them as well. All the stuff I'm installing today is just the SAS brand. I mean, it's not the best stuff on the market, but it's probably one of the better value for money brands out there. The pillar pod's also SAS, and I can tell you the build quality on it is pretty crap. It's very thin plastic and not quite the right colour. So I'll just touch it up. And I think the best way to explain how all this stuff goes in is for me to put it in and then walk you through it, and you can see exactly how I've mounted it all. So I'll catch you guys a little bit later on. Righto champions, I've got these gauges wired up and it was a huge job. It actually took way longer than I thought. A couple of trips to town to get fittings. I got a plug welded in the exhaust so I could just wind the EGT in. Because, yeah, pain in the ass. Real pain in the ass job. In saying that, nothing was too difficult, it was just time consuming. I'm going to take you out and I'll show you what I've done. Come on. Alright, so as you can see, the boost line's poking out there on the back. I've just used the hose it came with. It seems good enough for now. And most of the magic actually happens under this engine cover, so we're going to have to get it off. You can see the water temp poking out there, and the EGT, you can sneak a peek down there, but I'll rip this cover off and we'll have a bit better of a look. Alright guys, first off I'm going to show you the water temperature sender I put in. Now I've just drilled it and tapped it into the top of the thermostat housing here. I think it was about an 8th MBT, I'm not 100%. Just check up on the box on the one you get. It'll tell you what size to drill and tap it. Or at least tap it. You'll be able to figure out the drill size. So I've just wired that in and ran the wire along the side of the intake here. And that's where you can see the boost T plumbed in. This is where you plumb it in. Or this is where I've found anyway it works. So I just cut the hose here, banged that T in, and then ran my line. Like I said, it's just the original line that comes with the pack. It's a little bit softer plastic hose, but it seems to work fine. Now as we come across to this side of the engine, you can see the EGT probe poking up out of the dump pipe there. Now I did go into town to get this plug welded in, and I tell you what, it was cheap enough, I'd highly recommend it. The guys at Gladstone Suspension and Mufflers did an awesome job, and it was under 50 bucks. It was actually a fair bit under 50 bucks, so it's not worth messing around with yourself unless you're really keen. So the EGT probe's simple enough. It just runs up and then runs into the firewall with the rest of the wires and stuff I've put in here, and the gauge lines, just through that original grommet that goes through the firewall. And if we jump over to the inside of the car, you can kind of see where the wires come up near the pedal box there. And I've just taped them all together and then run them along the edge of the dash. And then they just tuck up under this kick panel and then under the door seal rubber, or whatever it's called, up to the dash and up to the pillar pod there that's all mounted in now. So a lot of these wires are going to want some conduit or some sort of protection over them. I'm going to go back through and do that now that everything's working correctly. Now these gauges also need power to function. So in the back of the pillar pod, I've wired all the gauges together for their illumination lights, their power and their earths. The idea of this is to cut down on the amount of wires you've got to run up into the pillar pod. So we should only have the 3 senders coming in, and then the 3 we've just mentioned. And just FYI, the boost gauge is mechanical and the other 2 are electrical. That's why it doesn't do a cool little warm-up thing like the other 2 do. Disappointing, I know, but that's life. Right, now let me show you where I got the power and the illumination from. Alright, so if you watch my other video when we replaced the cigarette lighter and switches down here with this switch panel and voltmeters, you would have known that we're not using the cigarette lighter anymore. And we're lucky enough that a cigarette lighter on an N70 has got power, earth, and it's also got an illumination bulb on there so you can light your darts in the dark. I don't know. But it's there anyway, so I've just used those exact wires that come off of it and ran them out to this switch panel where I've done all my wiring behind. Now it looks like an absolute bird's nest, and I can tell you there is a reason for that. It's because all these wires are really long, so I can do all the wiring out on the driver's seat. I can pull the whole panel out and do it all out there. But essentially what you're seeing is those 3 wires, the earth, the power and the illumination, coming from the cigarette lighter out to this panel, and then obviously it's all coiled up there so it looks like there's a lot of wires, and then into the switch panel, and we've got power going to 1 voltmeter, and then we've also drawn power from a secondary battery to the 2nd voltmeter, so we've wired them up at the same time. It's as simple as that with these voltmeters, just one wire from each battery. Essentially you can use your main battery is going to be running off the car's relays and everything that's already in there, and then your secondary one, you just want to run a direct wire from your secondary battery. But you do need to put a relay in, which I've done. I'll throw up a photo now. This is just a photo off Google that shows how a 5-pin relay works, which is what I had lying around. That way your voltmeter doesn't stay on when the car's turned off. Also, the rest of my switch panels run through that as well, so anything running off these switches will not be on when the car's on. Righto guys, that's pretty much everything wired up now. We've got the water temp, the boost, the EGT, and then the 2 voltmeters. So we've got 5 gauges in total in there now. So we're getting plenty of readings throughout the engine. You can always chuck a couple of extras in if you want, but that's the ones I'm running right now, and you can see how we've wired them up. So the wiring was pretty easy for the gauges. Obviously you've got the sender wires coming in, and then you've got the power, the earth, and the illumination. So you should have 3 more wires for that to power the gauges and light them up at night. So that's pretty much as easy as it gets. And then obviously the voltmeters, which I've just talked you through then. Bit of a pain with the relay, you don't have to use that, but your voltmeter will stay on when the car's turned off. Alright guys, if you've got any questions, I know that's a little bit complicated and I ran through it pretty quick, but if you've got any questions, feel free to comment on the video or send me a message. Of course this wasn't in an N70, but it'll work in pretty much any car. Yeah, so cheers for watching guys. I'll catch you next time. See ya.